Hello to everyone. Thank you for coming on this panel. You have heard that this is a panel about artificial intelligence ethics. And here are the prominent speakers about the topic. So we can start, can we? All of you know that technology is changing the world rapidly in the last 10 years. And I think the AI or artificial intelligence is not like a buzzword anymore. It's an essential tool for every area of business and life. So I personally believe that artificial intelligence will serve people in the best possible way. And that is our common goal, to make people believe in artificial intelligence-based products. But if we want that to come in live, we have to introduce codex and direction for artificial intelligence ethics introduction. And that's why we have representatives from government and non-government sector, from educational institutions and private sector to discuss about this topic. So let's start with positive questions and the positive examples, how technology is used, and what are the good practices of AI implementations. I suggest to start with Claudia Roda from the University of Paris, and she's also a director of master studies of data science and human rights. So Claudia, take the floor.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much for inviting me here. Look at the positive aspects. I think the places where we can see AI working well are probably, I would say, certainly certain aspect of medicine. So, for example, medical imaging is certainly one of the places where the progress has been strong, and also with, if you like, a smaller set of ethical problems and drug discovery, for sure. We have seen a lot of progress in environmental monitoring. And the reason why AI is particularly suited for that is because we are dealing with a very large amount of data, and we need to process it. And for human being, it's very difficult to process just the amount of information. And perhaps this is leads me to the general sense I have for where should we be going first, at least with AI. I think we should be concentrating on what machine can do better than human. Very often we try and use technology, and AI in particular, to save money, to scale, right? Think of, for example, assisting the elderly or education. There, in reality, human beings are better. So far, they're better. And the only reason why we go toward technology is because we can scale. So I think one safe way to stay on the good applications of AI, then we will talk on other good applications, but with all a bunch of problems, which are very difficult to, as we have been talking about, are very difficult to solve. But the good application of AIs, to me, are those where machines are just designed, can do things better than human calculations.
Thank you, Claudia. Would you like to add something on this question, Nevena Ružić, the representative? Nevena is a representative of Open Society Foundation of Serbia.
Well, I'm actually a person that could talk more about disadvantages rather than advantages, because I deal with the data protection and human rights. But yes, I would say that for repetitive tasks, we may rely on artificial intelligence, and it's also applicable to governmental services as well. So they are not also exclusive, although medicine, as the field has advanced or used the advantage of AI to the greatest level. But then again, it is also not without any, how would say, reservations, whether the use is such, whether we can rely on it to that extent to just ignore that we also have something to say as doctors, for example. So yeah, I mean, we can think of any field like transportation as well. So the list is, almost endless. I mean, is in every service. But for me, it's more about, like we were thinking of, can we secure ethics in the AI? I'm not sure actually. So the question is, like, for the time being, I don't know, maybe I sound dystopian, but I don't think that society at large is, willing to take that responsibility. At one point the previous panel also addressed the issue that we treat people as they're a little bit dumbish, or that we need to educate. And I agree, but then again, if we think of, I'm being a lawyer by profession, I also think like, okay, at the end, who is going to be responsible? So what we agreed here in Europe is that it's for the states to have not only negative, refrain from negative actions when it comes to human rights, but there is also positive obligation. And what does that mean? That means that the state is obliged and could be held accountable if they did not, if the state did not provide it for a framework where the rights can be exercised. And it's not only relationship between the individual and the state, but also between private parties. And that's actually a huge obligation to take on. And then, because of that, and I agree that this is kind of like a paternalistic approach and maybe should be rethought at one point, but for the time being, at least, those countries that are bound by the European Convention of Human Rights have agreed that they need to do more. And they, unfortunately, in doing so, might go to the extreme to treat people as dumbish.
Thank you, Nevena. Can we hear from Milan Gospić, who is here today he's the director of Microsoft in Serbia. Milan, can I ask you to add something from the first question about positive examples of how technology is used, especially in the artificial intelligence field?
I really appreciate the question, and thanks for sitting here with these distinguished guests. Being a technology company, discussing this type of topics, it's really important for us. And this is why I'm here today. Because this type of communication between us who are technology providers and the different other society, like academia or people from government, is helping us all to learn about what the technology today can do. And I will start by saying that I would rather say that artificial intelligence is something, first of all, we need to demystify, because there is a lot right now about artificial intelligence. And I was on a conference maybe like a month ago, where one of our professors from one of the institutes says, but guys, this is a pure mathematics. And this is what it is at the end, including the data science and everything else. You said it's a lot of data, and that's true. And this lot of data requires a lot of storage, a lot of processing, and a lot of speed in order really to get certain results. And we can talk about many other applications of this one. But this is where we need to start, to really understand what are we talking about when we talk about the artificial intelligence. The second thing is, as I said, I would rather put it to complement the human than to compete with the human, because at least in Microsoft, everything we do in a sense of the human-centric approach. We are the company that produce the platforms on which you are building your own applications, your own algorithms, your own artificial intelligence or machine learning or whatever you want to put it, algorithms. So from that point of view, I would say that it is extremely important to continue monitoring the progress of this field of data science, I would call, which we also call artificial intelligence, because this is a huge source of innovation. So let's put it in this way. Every company today is a digital company. And if you ask me about the application of AI, it is absolutely everywhere. Now, in which sense? It might be in a different type of algorithms that are helping, for example, I'm not here to marketing any of our products, but I have to say this one. If you are preparing a PowerPoint presentation, if you have the latest product from Microsoft, you will see that the PowerPoint is asking you, have you checked, are you having the right accessibility features applied to your presentation so that people with impaired hearing or with people that cannot see, can they really understand your application? All of this is artificial intelligence, and there is some beautiful way in which the technology can help the human. But I would say like this, it's a challenge, and we don't have all the answers. So we are learning together with you, but we are really investing in your success. So we want to make sure that we allow you the right tools so that you can build the things for the purpose to serve the humanity. And we don't call it ethical, I think this is the name of this panel, we call it responsible AI, because we don't want to put different type of, let me say, interpretations in what is ethical, what is not. We are calling it responsible because this is how we would like to see it's built. So let me start with this.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's go to the second question. What are the risk of artificial intelligence application in general? What are we the most concerned about? So Nevena, would you like to, sorry, Claudia, would you like to take this question?
Okay, so I think we have already heard some of these risks, right? On one hand, we can have the malicious use of AI for example, social manipulation. So the external, but this is true of any technology, and with a very wide interpretation of what technology is. It can always be used in a positive way or in a negative way. Then we have, with the use of AI, an extremely wide variety of errors that go from, not using the correct training data, so you end up with biases on the models that you build simply because, and we have heard, all of us have heard of all sorts of pretty scary thing that happened when you don't train your models with covering all the population. And with AI, you get with wrong models that are created because of the biases of the designer. And these are very often unknown to the designer because we don't know our biases. And then you have all the error that you can get simply because of the way in which you represent the results that you have obtained. So we have a wide range of problems like that. But to me, one of the biggest problem of the way in which AI is moving today is the and this is something you both, I think, mentioned, is the losing the sense of responsibility that comes with making certain decisions. So when we use AI for decision making, and there are many applications where AI is used for decision making, we somehow delegate decisions to the machine, and somehow we use it. We did it before with all sorts of technology. You know, I can't do this because the machine doesn't let me. How many times you heard that? And because I come from computer science, so with the background in human-computer interaction, to me it's always been horrifying. Well, you just change the algorithm so that you can do what you need to do. But now it's even worse. It's to a completely different scale, because we see, for example, judges, when they make evaluation, they do risk assessment on possible violent crime committed in the future. They use algorithms, and they don't need to justify their decisions anymore. But and this is to me, this is really troubling, the delegation of responsibility, and we need to bring it back. And where we bring it back is one of the big questions, I think, of establishing a set of a legal system that decides where the responsibility comes back to.
Back to regulation.
Well, I can just build on this argument, because I share it completely, because I love this delegation, or just like a shifting, transferring the accountability to somewhere. And this is, for me, this is problematic, because at the end, who is going to be responsible? So this is a huge challenge. Now, I mean, these days in Serbia, we have a debate over the new draft law on internal affairs, and I'm not going too far, but at one of the some provisions are actually trying to enable the surveillance with the facial recognition technology embedded, that would run all over the city of Belgrade. Obviously, if you have seen those cameras, allegedly they are not having software embedded for the time being, but it's for some would say it's a matter of time. Some of us would say, well, we'll see about it. So we will see how the debate will go. But just thinking of the overall implementation of such system. Of course, there are some safeguards also envisaged in the draft. But let's start for totally dystopian, like that we are all under surveillance. What is the outcome? The final outcome is that I, as an individual, will have to be able to document my whereabouts at every point, because we will rely on algorithm, and there are no false positives and false negatives. They're just kind of like statistic error. And I have to prove that on that very day, at that hour, I was not there. And it will be difficult to prove. But this is just one of the examples when we rely on data too much or heavily, ignoring the knowledge that we have. So we can do with any data, and this also existed in practice, that for a person it will be almost impossible to prove that the machine was wrong in their particular case. So for me, this is actually the greatest risk. And another point, but this is going backwards, is that technology is, I mean, definitely something that we use, but we have to articulate our need. And this is what I mean, this is my personal impression. I'm sharing this as an individual, that sometimes I have the feeling that we are just being so lured with it that we actually have no idea what is the purpose of us using it. I'm not saying that there is not, but we haven't articulated it, and we are led by technology and not vice versa. And we mentioned also GDPR, this General Data Protection Regulation. There are a few things about it. So the start is like technology is there to serve humanity, society. This is important, and we have to reiterate that. Last year, there is a this is General Privacy Assembly comprising of data protection commissioners worldwide. And they did a survey to see how able data protection commissioners are to address the issue of artificial intelligence. Unfortunately, the survey is not of relevance in terms of the number of answers, total number of answers, but the results are not so great because they're not. And many authorities, especially when we talk about state authorities, do not possess knowledge or the means to address the issue. And I think this is a must. And it's not only about data protection commissioners, it's also equity commissioners, ombudspersons, but also the state authorities with the ideas of implementing technology, which is so great, and the software is not so expensive, and the public procurement procedure is not that demanding, etc., etc. So I mean, we need to, just to go back to basics. If something goes wrong, who is going to be held responsible? And if we don't have the answer to that question, then the whole system is actually wrong. Because I mean, we also ask who is to blame. I mean, who am I going to sue? Yeah? I need to practice the knowledge I gain at the university. I'm going to court, and who is the respondent party?
And where to start, actually? Where to start to educate people?
Where to start in the process that is ongoing. So yeah, so I mean, of course, I mean, we now have to adjust, but this is the question. Without, I mean, doing this, like now we have to stop this everything, and now we go back to basics, because this is not possible. But I mean, I don't have the answer. I mean, that's certain. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
What I like is actually, you said something that I have here in my script. Technology is here to serve people. So this is very important, and I would really start from that point. I'm an engineer. I have finished the Electrotechnic University faculty here in Belgrade, and been doing more or less the programming when I was young. Now I'm in some completely different fields, but in general, we need to go back to basics in connecting technology with people, because humans are the ones who made that technology. Humans are the ones who are making all of these algorithms, scripts, and everything else. So I'm not here to judge or debate. I agree with you about the responsibility from that perspective, and how to connect it in that chain. For sure, this is something to be discussed and a topic for the regulators, but this is not a wild animal running around the neighborhood. So this is what I want to say about the artificial intelligence. And if I look at some things that, again, in Microsoft we are now preparing tools for actually controlling the artificial intelligence algorithms. So meaning that you can use, that there is a name of the tool, I will find it later on, that will actually give you a possibility to understand what the algorithm is doing behind that one. So if someone has prepared a certain algorithm on whatever use case we take, there are also tools right now who can demystify what is behind that one and how the data is used and everything else. This is super important for us because we have 6 guiding principles. And why I'm telling you all of this, again, I'm saying this is not the marketing. I just want you to understand how also the technological giants, as Microsoft is, are thinking. So we put the 6 guiding principles on responsible AI. So this is how we call it. It's a fairness, reliability and safety, privacy and security, inclusiveness, transparency, and accountability. The technology is now so good that basically when we look at the reliability and other things, there are not so many problems. But if you think about privacy, if you think about security, if you think about inclusiveness, this is where actually the machines and technology cannot help you so much if the human has not built and design it in the right way. So if we talk about the negative, the most of the things that I have seen by now, and I don't want to talk about now things like a GDPR or how you basically provide your data, where these data go, and so on, so on. At least in Microsoft, we say your data is your data. We just help you manage your data. But there are a lot of things about the data, but what I want to say is inclusiveness. This is where machine has no clue. And very often in all of these algorithms, they don't know, are you Caucasian, or you're Hispanic, or you're young, or you're old. It depends how the algorithm is set. And this is where we have seen quite a lot of mistakes have been done by now. So I would just stop here because, I mean, when it comes to the rest of the discussion, I really support all you said about the responsibility and where it is, but actually we are calling this accountability. So even more than just the responsibility in all the process. And you know, in order to have the accountability, it is always important to have a governance process. So how the things have been put into practice and how this practice is used. So this is the part where we insist a lot. And I think more and more you will hear about this one. So how the companies that are using the modern technology are actually governing what they do with that technology.
Thank you, Milan. This is the excellent introduction to the next questions. Maybe Nevena can answer. Is there some breakthrough guidelines that you already introduced in Serbia, or can you compare it with the world situation actually?
Third, at the EU level, there are those trustworthy use of artificial intelligence document, and something similar is being drafted here. So the debate on guidelines on ethical use of artificial intelligence is ongoing, I think. I mean, its deadline should be like next week or something like that. And that was a group that consisted of 33 members of different stakeholders. There were civil society organizations that were presented. One would argue, I mean, I would argue that it could have been more. It could have been more public authorities. As I mentioned, it is not only for specific independent institutions like Data Protection Commissioner, it is also for Equity Commissioner. So I think it could have been even more engaging in terms of drafting, but at the same time, that's also a start. So at the moment, I actually think that talking from Serbian perspective, that we are not ready to regulate it as regulation should look like. So like making it something that will bind everybody. So these guidelines are just the beginning of a path, I would say. A positive one, but I mean, at one point we need to start. That does not mean that they don't have space to improve, that some questions are left unanswered, or that some issues could have been better elaborated or defined, or I mean, some issues are lacking, but at least it is a start.
So I'm wondering, when you're introducing those guidelines, are you actually cooperating with the private sector? Because as Milan said, like in example of Microsoft, they're a world giant, so they're actually leading some trends and they're bringing some trends here at the local markets. Are you actually cooperating with them, for example? Yeah. To make the best possible guidelines.
I'm not from the government, so I'm not in the process in terms of leading at all. I mean, the whole process or just a bit of it. So I'm just
you're the part of the working group.
But the representative of Microsoft was a member of the working group.
Yes, we do have a person in that working group, and we are really happy about that one because, as I said, to have a end-to-end picture of technology, society, use, and so on, we have to gather even more. and talk even more about this one in order really to find the right way how we as a technology company can support everything that is needed in the society in a right way. And as I said, we do not have all the answers. In certain cases, we are all learning. As you said, it's important that we started. So from that perspective, I see that, you know, at least in the country, in Serbia, that there are few good examples where we started talking about the artificial intelligence. One of that is the work group that we are involved. Another one was basically a strategy of the artificial intelligence deployment in a country until 2025. We have now an Institute of Artificial Intelligence in Novi Sad. So there is quite a lot of things that, you know, are moving in the right direction for a country to, I would say, follow and embrace the technology trends. And this is very important from the perspective of giving the possibility in the country, in Serbia, for people to innovate in a right way. Because you're getting new resources, there are more, not only, let me say, technical capabilities, but we are also building up the academia capabilities. Now I think, not sure if started or it's starting, we have a master's in AI on our faculties. The programming languages are in the primary school, secondary school, already deployed. This is a huge step of actually making sure that we are in this latest technology trends and we enable our society to understand really what these trends are and how to use them. Another big buzzword beside the AI is, of course, the cloud. And for you, you might know us as a Microsoft, someone who, when you open up laptop, you are all very often mentioning like, you know, especially if something is not working, but it's, it is what it is. I think it's good, but joking apart, we are the second largest world hyperscaler in cloud. And actually all of this, what we discussed today, is also part of the cloud services. So you can use quite a lot of capabilities of cloud, and I'm talking about hyperscaling cloud, to build your algorithms, to store your data, to use the processing power. This is becoming a huge, but really huge, like a supercomputer, worldwide big one that you can use. And AI for me is just a service of that big computer, let's put it in this way.
Just want to add one thing. I think obviously is essential, the dialogue between the private sector and the state and whatever the education is essential. And to me, there are three levels there. One is the regulation and dialogue necessary there. Then there is the recommendation level, which is also very important because it's a step. It's a way in which that dialogue can grow. And then there is another step that perhaps we haven't mentioned yet here is the standardization. And while normally the state drives the regulation, very often industry drives the standardization. And I think if we manage to create a dialogue between regulation and standardization, which at the moment is absolutely inexistent as far as I know, I think we could do something good there.
Thank you. And what should be left to regulation and what should be the matter of ethics?
I'm silent because I have no answer to that question. So yeah, I don't know.
Anyone?
That's a difficult one. That, you know, I would just like to say one thing, that over-regulated process is usually killing the innovations. And we have to have the right balance between allowing progress and controlling this progress. Let's put it in this way. But the regulation definitely in many aspects are already there. And I would say one of the most important one is for me the GDPR and in general processing of data, especially the personal data. So if you talk about the AI, I would say that this is one of the foundations of what this AI and how the AI should function. So I would stop here.
Just one thing. The problem with the okay, the GDPR, it's great. We're really thankful to have that. I think, but there is still lots of work to do on the GDPR, and especially with AI. With respect to AI, the GDPR is still quite shaky. And I think one problem that we shouldn't forget is that the regulation normally protects the vulnerable. And so whenever we think of regulation, we should think of the vulnerable population, because maybe the regulation we have now, it's good enough for the average citizen. I'm not too sure it's good enough for the vulnerable population.
Thank you, Claudia.
I would just add on this regulation part, just for you to understand. I mean, I found here in the script a couple of interesting stuff, and I basically just ask you to check the Microsoft Responsible AI. You can go and find a nice website with quite a lot of data there, and also there is an AI Business Academy that you can also use. It's basically a learning course, and I think that is everyone can use it. We have put several bodies inside of Microsoft in order to be able to control what we do. So we do have this Office of Responsible AI, which is basically the body inside, the organization inside of the Microsoft, who is looking into developments in an AI and where it's going, and making sure that it is according to this 6 guiding principle that we said. And then we have ethics in engineering and research. So we have a special committee that is looking into this one. So when we talk about the regulation, I'm going back to why we are calling it responsible AI, because basically we want to treat it responsible. And I think this is a real example of how every company which deals with producing machine learning algorithms or any kind of a commercial AI that is affecting our lives, in any case should do. They need to have a certain body that is really looking into what this specific AI is doing. And usually, this is not just people from that specific company or so. This needs to bring a broader audience inside of this type of committees. So this is just one example of not a regulation, but I would say way how we treat and control the AI development.
Thank you, Milan. Claudia, I would like to ask you, we have 2 more questions. I think we have time for that. How you see that AI will shape the future of educational system?
Okay, so I think education is one of those fields where the interaction, the human interaction, is absolutely essential. And I think AI can help a lot in the use of data, in the sense of, for example, for everything that is administration, it's great. I won't say much about learning analytics because I come from that field a long time ago, and I stepped out. That's all I'm going to say. But I think the real opportunity in education for artificial intelligence and data science is that, okay, we'll need a, digital literacy plus program so that we can educate everyone to deal with artificial intelligence, data manipulation online. But also we can use it as a new way, and this is the way we are using it at the moment, and is great, is working really well, as a new way of looking at many different problems. So when you represent what's happening in science, what's happening in politics, what's happening in history, using data, you basically reduce it, and as long as you know that you're reducing it, you're representing something in a very specific way. And we have seen it, for example, with Matteo's presentation this morning. He took a problem, which is a social problem, and then he decided, okay, I'm going to represent this thing this way, I'm going to measure this thing this way, and so reduce the problem to something that can be analyzed. And I think this is an exceptionally good way of creating a dialogue that sometimes is very difficult to establish between disciplines. So I see data science and AI as a tool to create a conversation between different disciplines, as long as we always remember that as soon as we represent something in a quantitative rather than qualitative manner, we are reducing it. So we need to keep going between the quantitative and the qualitative. But the dialogue is beautiful, I think. It's really enriching across the discipline. So this is a real opportunity that I see.
Thank you very much. And we can, conclude with the last question, so everyone can answer. What are the next steps when we talk about application of ethics in artificial intelligence? In your fields, of course.
Let me start. Okay. And I don't want to be long on this one because I think I already said maybe not all, but quite a lot about Microsoft approach to a whole story. In the meantime, I have found one of the names of the tools that we are working on, and this one is called Interpret Machine Learning. And it is basically a tool that is making AI models explainable, as it's written here, or interpretable. So meaning that we will continue in coming up with more and more technology innovations that will help human build, design, control, and making sure that all of the right principles for the responsible use of technology are there. So this is what is our task as a technology company, looking from the Microsoft perspective, with an idea. Now I have to say this slogan, you know, we say we are here to empower every person and every organization in the world to achieve more. So this is what we want to do, give you tools that you have for building up your success. And in those tools, we want to really demystify the story of a cloud, demystify the story of an AI, and making sure that you have all the resources to use in the right way so that you can continue building up. This is a trend that we cannot stop. This is a trend that we will for sure have to learn quite a lot about. As I said, we don't have all the answers. I started with this one, and we are all learning together. And I'm quite sure that also the future regulations, this is going to be an open book that will constantly be updated as the technology progresses. So we need to keep the dialogues like this really open and frequent, and have a good understanding of how the future from that perspective will look like. But I can only say that it will rely on innovations, and they will continue even with the stronger pace with the, let's call it the digitalization trend in general. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Milan.
I would agree that there is a need to, continuing an ongoing dialogue between different stakeholders, but also between different professions. To some extent, this area is sort of hijacked by certain professions, not allowing other professions to get involved. As is the case, for example, in data protection. It's also about techie persons and lawyers. And I think that was actually not a good start. We mentioned GDPR in terms of application of artificial intelligence, and yes, I totally agree that there are loopholes, and at least two things that come to my mind. First is transparency, which is one of the principles of data protection. There is no way that one can explain how the algorithm works in a meaningful way so the person can understand. This saying, I'm not suggesting that the person is stupid. It's just because, listing the whole code for me, but also for a surgeon would be almost meaningless. That's one thing. So in that terms, this principle as the core principle cannot be achieved. Hence, everything falls apart in terms of, if we put artificial intelligence into GDPR. The second one is the right not to be subject to automated decision making. And there is a precondition that there has to be a meaningful human interaction. Well, starting from humans, like when we say that this is the algorithm and the machine calculated this, and they took into account, and the machine took into account, I don't know how many terabytes of data. Who are you to say that this is not right? Yeah, this is just psychological pressure on the person, and this meaningful human interaction. Well, I would claim, of course, this is debatable, that it does not exist. So in that sense, GDPR cannot be applied. Hence, we need something else. But we need something else that would not let loose, the innovation, etc. Because again, I'm talking from the perspective of accountability, but also responsibility in terms of okay, who is going to be fined? Who is going to, face some different sanctions? Who is going to be, ordered to do something else, and what? In this sense, we need to understand it. So, on top of the dialogue, we also need to think of structuring our, societal response in a meaningful way, in an abstract applicable norms. Unfortunately, I know this sounds like, yeah, but we will prevent the innovation, etc., and the applicability. And a third thing, sorry for keeping, it's also the risk-based approach. So this impact assessment has to be inevitable action, whatever we do. Ideally, impact assessment we should, start implementing since we are a young age, and do, in terms of who we interact and the school we go to, etc., etc. We are definitely not machines, but we need to learn it. This impact assessment is also novelty in our society, and in many cases it does not exist. It started existing with GDPR, adopted in 2016, and started implementation in 2018. So for less than 5 years, or it's like 4 and some years that GDPR is implemented, we can also say that this data protection impact assessment, the DPAA, is not always well implemented. And that also suggests, or may suggest, that other risk-based approaches would need practice and would need elaboration. What is needed? So that will be my say.
Thank you, Nevena.
Just very quickly, I completely agree with what you said. It's exactly the problem: transparency, decision making, and the risk-based approach that is not necessarily the best way to go. For transparency, okay, so one problem of transparency is explainability, and sometimes we can't have explainability simply because once we have built our machine deep learning algorithm, we have no idea of how the algorithm came to the conclusion. We just don't know. So that's a problem. But for transparency, I think there is something we could do, and to make it always explicit when somebody is interacting with a technology or when is interacting with a person. And this is not the case at the moment. That would be very simple, at least to say, this is an avatar, this is a virtual human, this is generated by ChatGPT or I mixed the two. Anyhow, so that's something easy that we can start doing.
Thank you, Claudia. Thank you all for participating in this panel. I hope you enjoyed it and heard a lot of valuable messages. And you can continue discussion or ask additional questions to our panelists just here in the hall after the panel. Thank you very much for listening.